I thought I knew what betrayal felt like, but nothing could have prepared me for the moment I discovered my wife, Emily, was cheating on me. Our relationship had always seemed solid, or at least I convinced myself it was. Sure, we had our ups and downs like any couple, but I believed in us. We had been together for 6 years, and I thought we were building a future, one that included buying a house, having kids, and growing old together. But life has a funny way of turning your perceptions upside down. The trouble began just before my father's funeral. Emily started acting distant. I noticed she was on her phone more often, laughing at texts and quickly putting her phone away whenever I walked into the room. I brushed it off as stress. After all, I was dealing with the loss of my father, someone who had been a rock in my life, and maybe she was just trying to give me space. But deep down, I felt a nagging sensation that something wasn't right. The day of the funeral was a blur. I barely remember the service. I was in a fog, consumed by grief. I didn't even notice that Emily wasn't by my side the entire time. She tried to act supportive, but I could feel her slipping away even as I buried my father. It wasn't until I got home that things began to unravel. That evening, I went to check on my email, and as I opened my laptop, I noticed her phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. It was unusual for her to leave it behind, and curiosity got the better of me. I briefly hesitated, but I picked it up. There it was, a message from someone named Jake. I didn't even know a Jake. My heart raced as I opened it. The message was flirty, full of inside jokes and intimate references that sent my mind spiraling. I felt sick. I rifled through her texts, my hands shaking as I read more exchanges. They were planning to meet up the night of my father's funeral. My breath quickened and the room started to spin. I slammed her phone down in disbelief, anger boiling over. How could she do this to me, to us? I hadn't even buried my father yet, and she was out there, betraying the vows we took. When she came home later that night, I confronted her. I didn't even let her take off her coat. I stood in the living room, arms crossed, heart pounding as I demanded to know who Jake was. The shock on her face was almost satisfying at first. She stammered, trying to play it off as nothing, claiming Jake was just a friend from the gym who had been supportive. But I wasn't buying it. I threw the texts in her face, watching as her excuses crumbled under the weight of the truth. Emily's demeanor shifted from disbelief to defensive. She became aggressive, blurring the lines between denial and justification. "It's not what you think. I didn't do anything. You were gone and I was here. I needed someone," she yelled. Her words stung more than I thought possible, each one digging deeper into my heart. I felt a mix of emotions surge through me: anger, humiliation, betrayal. I had lost my father and now I had lost my wife. I struggled to hold back tears, but they came anyway. I had thought I was the one suffering, yet here was Emily screaming at me about her needs. It felt surreal. The confrontation escalated into a shouting match, and as much as I wanted to throw every hurtful word back at her, I knew I had to step away. I needed air. I needed to think. I left the house, the front door slamming behind me, echoing the finality of what I had just discovered. Overwhelmed by emotions, I walked to the nearby park. It was dark. The night sky was littered with stars, but I felt none of their beauty. All I could feel was betrayal. How could she do this to me? How could she justify her actions? As I sat on a bench, it dawned on me that I couldn't let this define me. I had to decide what came next. I had to think clearly, not just about our marriage, but about my own well-being. I took a deep breath, realizing the journey ahead would be long, but I was determined to move forward. The cool night air did little to soothe the storm churning inside me. I sat on that park bench, replaying the confrontation in my mind over and over again. Each time I did, I felt the anger flare up anew, paired with a deep sense of betrayal. I couldn't believe the woman I had loved and trusted so completely had been unfaithful, and during a time when I needed her the most. It felt like a cruel joke, one I'd never asked to be part of. I spent the next few days in a haze. The funeral and the days following were filled with obligatory family visits and sympathy calls, but all I could think about was Emily. I had no idea how to face her again, let alone what to say. I was torn between the love I felt for her and the anger that boiled beneath the surface. My friends, who offered their condolences and support, had no idea that I was grappling with a betrayal that made losing my father feel like a mere background noise. After a couple of days, I returned home. The atmosphere was tense, like a coiled spring ready to snap. Emily had been avoiding me, but she finally approached me in the living room, her expression a mix of guilt and defiance, like she was ready to fight but knew I wasn't in the mood for it. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady but her eyes betraying her uncertainty. I wanted to scream. I wanted to launch into another confrontation, but instead I took a deep breath, steeling myself to hear whatever excuse she had to offer. "What do you want to say?" I replied, my voice cold and wrapped in an icy veneer. Emily launched into a lengthy explanation, trying to rationalize her actions. "You were gone and I was so lonely. I didn't think you would care. I didn't think it would matter," she pleaded, her eyes wide and pleading. "Jake was just someone to talk to. We never intended for it to happen the way it did." I could hardly contain my disbelief. "You didn't think it would matter. You didn't think I would care," I shot back. "I was at my father's funeral, Emily. You could have waited. You could have been there for me instead of chasing some cheap thrill." She tried to argue, claiming it was a moment of weakness, a lapse in judgment. But I wasn't in a forgiving mood. Her justifications felt like a slap in the face, and I knew I had to make a decision about our future together. The emotional weight of it all was crushing. I felt like I was carrying the burden of our entire relationship on my back. I dug deep, searching for the anger I had felt before, but now it was mixed with sorrow and disbelief. I never thought I'd be the guy who would be cheated on. I had lived my life believing love was pure, that it was the ultimate commitment, and here I was, standing in a room filled with years of memories, feeling like a complete fool. As days turned into weeks, the confrontation replayed endlessly in my mind. I had one foot in the door of our marriage and the other firmly planted in the realm of separation. Emily tried everything to show remorse. She cried, apologized, and promised to cut all ties with Jake. But each time she brought it up, I felt a knot in my stomach tighten. I couldn't shake the feeling that her remorse was more about losing me than truly understanding the weight of her betrayal. I decided it was time to take a break from the emotional chaos. I packed a bag and took temporary refuge at my brother's apartment. I needed space to think, to breathe, and to look at the situation from a distance. It hurt to be away from the life we had built together, but the thought of facing Emily every day was suffocating. Living out of a suitcase wasn't ideal, but it gave me clarity. I spent long hours walking through the city, contemplating my next steps. I began to realize that this wasn't just about her infidelity. It was about my own happiness, my own future. I had to ask myself a hard question. Was this the kind of relationship I wanted to fight for? Did I want to rebuild what was broken, or was it time to walk away? I connected with friends who had been through similar situations, shared my experiences, and listened to their advice. Each story reinforced my belief that I deserved better. As the days turned into weeks, I began to formulate a plan, one that would allow me to regain control over my life and my heart. I returned home one evening, determined to talk to Emily about the future. I felt a newfound strength within me. No matter how much I had loved her, I knew I could let her actions dictate my worth. I had buried my father, and now I was ready to bury the pain of this betrayal and leave it behind, too. It was time to confront the reality of our marriage, and I was prepared for whatever came next. It was a rainy evening when I finally returned home to confront Emily again. The air felt heavy, thick with tension, and I knew that what I was about to say could alter the course of our lives forever. As I walked through the front door, memories flooded my mind. The laughter, the quiet moments we shared, even the mundane routines that had formed the fabric of our life together. But now those memories were tainted by betrayal, and I had to sift through them to find clarity. Emily was in the kitchen when I arrived, stirring a pot on the stove. She looked up, her expression a mix of hope and anxiety. "Hey, I'm glad you're back," she said softly, trying to read my mood. I could see the remnants of guilt etched on her face, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy, but it quickly faded. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, my voice firm but calm. She nodded slowly, bracing herself for the weight of the conversation. I gestured for her to sit down at the kitchen table, the heart of our home where we had shared countless meals, laughter, and dreams. Now it felt more like a battleground. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. I've spent the last few weeks thinking about everything that's happened, about us. I needed time to really process the pain and betrayal I felt when I found out about Jake. I watched her flinch at the mention of his name, but I pressed on. I need to know if you truly understand the consequences of your actions. This isn't just about a mistake, it's about trust, and you shattered that. Emily's eyes filled with tears and she opened her mouth to respond, but I raised a hand to stop her. Let me finish, I said, feeling a surge of determination. I don't want to hear excuses or justifications right now. I need honesty. Do you love him? I asked, my heart racing at the vulnerability of that question. She hesitated, the silence stretching between us like an unbridgeable chasm. No, I don't love him, she finally said, her voice trembling. It was a stupid fling, a way to escape. I was just so lost without you there. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but the words felt hollow. I had been lost too, but I hadn't turned to another man for comfort. I've given you everything, Emily, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You were my partner, my confidant. How could you betray me like this? I stood by you through challenges, and when I needed you the most, you turned your back on me. She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. I'm so sorry, I was weak and I thought I was helping myself by finding someone else to lean on. But it was the worst mistake of my life. I hate myself for it. I watched her, torn between anger and empathy. It was clear she was hurting, but I couldn't ignore the fact that I was hurting too, maybe even more. I had to focus on what was best for me now. Emily, I can't just sweep this under the rug. I need to know if you're willing to fight to rebuild what we had, or if this is the end of us. Her eyes widened and she reached for my hand, desperation etched into her features. I want to fight, I swear. I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I'm committed to making this work. I'll go to counseling, I'll be accountable, anything. Just please don't give up on us. I wanted to believe her, but I needed to protect myself. I need time, Emily. I can't promise that things will go back to how they were. Trust is hard to rebuild, and I can't pretend everything is okay. I paused, feeling the weight of my next words. I think it might be better for us to take a step back. I need to figure out what I want and if I can ever truly forgive you. I saw the light in her eyes dim as she processed my words, but there was a glimmer of understanding. I get it. I don't want to pressure you. Just know that I love you and I'm willing to do the work. Her admission hit me like a freight train. Had no doubt that she loved me, but love alone wouldn't fix what was broken. I needed more than just words. I needed actions to back them up. After that conversation, we both fell into an uneasy rhythm. I stayed in the house, but it felt more like a shared space rather than a home. Emily was genuinely trying. She went to therapy, began journaling, and made an effort to reconnect with me. But every laugh, every shared meal, every quiet moment was tinged with the shadow of her betrayal. I wrestled with my emotions daily. I missed the intimacy we once had, the carefree moments that made our relationship special. I wanted to believe that we could come back from this, but the doubt lingered, gnawing at me like a persistent itch. During this time, I confided in my brother, who had always been my voice of reason. He listened as I vented my frustrations, sharing my fears about reconciliation. You deserve to be happy, man. Just don't rush into anything. Take your time, he advised, his voice steady. I appreciated his insight, but my heart was heavy with uncertainty. I didn't want to lose the woman I'd loved for so long, yet I knew I had to protect myself. I was learning that love, while powerful, wasn't always enough to mend the deep cuts of betrayal. Days turned into weeks, and as I continued to navigate the complexities of our strained relationship, I knew that whatever decision I made would shape the rest of my life. Would I choose to forgive Emily, or was it time to finally close the door on our marriage? The answer was still just out of reach, but one thing was clear. I could never go back to the way things were. I had buried my father, and I could no longer ignore the need to bury the past I had with her too. As the weeks passed, I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. I was living in limbo, a sort of emotional purgatory where every day felt like a repetitive cycle of hope and disappointment. Emily was trying her hardest to show me she wanted to make things right, But every time I looked at her, I was reminded of her betrayal. It was like an invisible wall had been built between us, one that I wasn't sure could ever come down. It was one particularly tense evening when everything came to a head. I had just returned home from another long day of work, my mind still wrestling with the chaos of my feelings. I walked into the living room to find Emily sitting on the couch, her face illuminated by the glow of the TV, but her mind clearly elsewhere. I could tell she had been waiting for me. "Hey," she said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "How was your day?" "Busy," I replied curtly, not in the mood for small talk. I dropped my bag on the floor and leaned against the wall, crossing my arms. I could feel tension hanging in the air like an unwanted guest. Emily shifted on the couch, her demeanor suddenly serious. "Can we talk about us?" I let out a long sigh. I could feel the weight of the conversation descending again, but I knew we had to address it. I nodded slowly, inviting her to continue. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she started, her voice trembling slightly. "I've started seeing my therapist twice a week. She's helped me realize how much I took for granted and how deep my issues run. I want to share that with you. I want to work through this together." I stared at her, my heart racing. I was torn between wanting to support her and the suffocating realization that I was still grappling with my own pain. "Emily, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I feel like I'm still in the dark about so much. I need you to be honest with me about everything, about Jake, about why you did this." Her eyes filled with tears as she took a deep breath, clearly struggling to find the right words. "I was lost, and I thought Jake was someone who could give me the attention I felt I was missing. But it was wrong, and it didn't fix anything. I've realized that my issues weren't about you at all, they were about me." I wanted to scream, to shake her and make her understand the depth of the hurt she had caused, but instead, I chose to listen. "You said you were lonely while I was at my dad's funeral. It kills me to think of you reaching out to someone else in that moment. I know, and I hate myself for it. I can't change what happened, but I want to change how I am moving forward," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "I want to be better for you. I want to be better for us." I ran my hands through my hair, overwhelmed. "Emily, those words are great, but I need to see change. I don't want to keep playing this game of what-ifs. I need to feel secure again. I need to know you're committed to fixing what's been broken." She looked at me, determination replacing her earlier sadness. "I promise you I'm committed. I'll do everything it takes." The sincerity in her eyes sparked a flicker of hope within me. That night we talked late into the evening, discussing our feelings, fears, and desires. I shared my doubts about the future while she offered reassurances. We spoke about therapy, communication, and rebuilding trust. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of optimism. Perhaps this was the turning point we both needed. I saw how hard she was trying and was reminded of the love that still lingered beneath the pain. But even with that flicker of hope, I couldn't shake the feeling of trepidation. The days following our conversation were a mixed bag. Emily continued her therapy sessions, which seemed to help her process her emotions. She seemed more present, more engaged, but there were still moments when the past seeped back in. I found it difficult to shake the memories of her betrayal, and I struggled with questions about whether I could truly forgive her. One day during a therapy session, Emily shared something that struck a chord within me. She told her therapist about how she had been feeling suffocated by my expectations, which had driven her to seek validation elsewhere. When I heard this later, it cut deep. I had never intended to put pressure on her. I thought I was being supportive. I confronted her later that evening, my frustration boiling over. "You felt suffocated. You had no right to go out and cheat on me. You could have talked to me about how you were feeling instead of running to someone else." Emily's face fell as she realized how her words had come across. "I know, and I'm sorry. I'm just trying to make sense of everything. I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to rebuild what we had, but I also need to understand myself better." Her honesty cut both ways. I recognized the struggle she was facing, but it didn't make the pain of her actions any less acute. "I need to feel like we're in this together, Emily," I said, my voice softer now. "We both have to work on ourselves, but we also have to work on our relationship. I want to support you, but I need to feel supported too." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I promise I'll work on that. I don't want us to be defined by this mistake. I want us to grow stronger. I wanted to believe her, but trust is a fragile thing. I spent the following weeks wrestling with my feelings. I attended some of her therapy sessions with her as a way to understand her better and to learn how we could work together. It was uncomfortable, sitting in a room where my vulnerabilities were laid bare, but I knew it was necessary. As we navigated through the murky waters of rebuilding our relationship, I began to feel a shift. We started to communicate more openly, revealing our fears and vulnerabilities. I even joined a support group for partners of people who have cheated. I found comfort in hearing other stories, realizing that I wasn't alone in my struggle. Despite the progress, I still had moments of doubt. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, feelings of betrayal bubbling up, threatening to consume me whole. I knew I had to confront those feelings head-on if I wanted us to move forward. One evening, after a particularly emotional day, I sat down with Emily. "I'm scared," I admitted, my voice cracking. "I'm scared that I'll never fully forgive you. I'm scared that I'll always feel this weight on my shoulders." Emily reached for my hand, squeezing it tightly. "I understand. It's okay to feel that way. I'm scared too, but I promise you I'll be here every step of the way." Her words were comforting, but the uncertainty still loomed large. I knew the journey ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but as I looked into her eyes, I saw a flicker of the love that had once drawn us together. Maybe, just maybe, we could forge a path forward together. It wouldn't be easy, but I was willing to try. I had buried my father, and I was learning to bury the past I had with Emily too. It was time to start anew, to let go of the shadows of betrayal and embrace the possibility of healing. As spring turned to summer, the long days brought both warmth and an underlying tension that seemed to follow me like a shadow. Emily and I were trying to navigate the complexities of our relationship, but it felt like walking a tightrope. We had made progress, but each step forward felt precarious, as if we could fall at any moment into the pit of distrust that loomed beneath us. Our sessions with the therapist were becoming more productive. Emily was opening up about her feelings, and I was learning to express my own. I could see glimpses of the person I had fallen in love with, the woman who had once brought joy and laughter into my life. But there were still dark moments when the memories of her betrayal would flood my mind and threatened to pull me under. One evening I returned home from work to find Emily in the kitchen preparing dinner. The smell of garlic and herbs wafted through the air, and for a moment it felt like old times. I hung up my coat and joined her, offering to chop vegetables. We chatted about our days, and I tried to focus on the moment. But as she laughed and smiled, I felt a familiar pang of doubt in my heart. Was this real? Could I trust her again? I glanced at her, and the uncertainty must have shown on my face because her expression shifted. "What's wrong?" she asked, concern lacing her voice. "It's just, sometimes I wonder if we're really making progress or if we're just pretending," I admitted, my tone heavy with vulnerability. Emily paused, her hands stilling in the task of stirring the sauce. "I get that. I know I've broken your trust and it's going to take time, but I am trying, and I need you to trust that I want us to heal. I don't want to pretend anymore." Her sincerity struck a chord in me. Maybe we were making progress, albeit slowly. I wanted to believe her. "I just don't want to keep reliving the past," I said quietly. "I want to move forward, but I need to feel safe doing it." She stepped closer, her eyes searching mine. "Then let's make a pact. No more hiding from the hard conversations. If something bothering you, I want you to tell me. I promise to do the same." It was a good start, and for the first time in weeks I felt a flicker of hope. "Okay," I said with a hint of a smile. "I can work with that." As the weeks rolled on, I tried to commit to our pact. I started sharing my feelings more openly with her, and I noticed Emily doing the same. We shared our fears, our desires, and the pain that had festered between us. It was a slow process, but it felt like we were slowly chipping away at the wall that had separated us for so long. One weekend, we decided to take a short trip to the coast, somewhere we had always loved to go together. I hoped that a change of scenery would allow us to reconnect without the weight of our past hanging over us. We spent the day walking along the beach, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore serving as a soothing backdrop to our tentative conversations. As the sun began to set, We found a quiet spot on the sand where we could sit and watch the sky turn shades of pink and orange. I took a deep breath, trying to soak in the moment. "I've missed this," I said, glancing at Emily, who was watching the horizon with a distant look in her eyes. "I have too," she replied softly. "It feels good to be away from everything for a bit." I turned to her, the weight of my heart in my throat. "I want to try and be happy again. I want us to find our way back to each other." She looked at me, her eyes shining with tears. "I want that more than anything. I know I messed up, but I want to make it right. I'm committed to rebuilding our love." As we sat there watching the sunset, I felt a flicker of something, a glimmer of hope. That maybe we could find our way back to the love we had once shared. But just as quickly as the hope arose, doubts crept in. Could I really forgive her? Could we truly move on? The next day, something unexpected happened that would test our resolve. We decided to go for a hike, taking in the beauty of the coastline. As we walked, we talked and laughed, feeling a sense of normalcy returning. But as we reached the summit, I pulled out my phone to take a picture of the view, and the screen lit up with notifications. Among them was a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe. Miss you so much." Jay, my heart dropped. I turned to Emily, my breath catching in my throat. Who the hell is Jay? Her face drained of color as she read the message, panic washing over her. I don't know. I swear it's not what you think." The wind whipped around us and the beautiful day suddenly felt oppressive. "Are you serious? You promised me you cut ties with him. How can this be happening again?" I shouted, anger and hurt flooding my veins. "Please let me explain. I don't know who this is. I haven't talked to anyone from that part of my life, I swear." I stepped back, my mind racing. Had I been naive to think she could change? The betrayal I thought I had begun to heal from had resurfaced, and I felt the ground shifting beneath me. "I can't do this, Emily. I can't keep going back and forth." As I turned to leave, she grasped my arm, desperation flooding her eyes. "No, please don't walk away. I will get to the bottom of this. I'll show you that I'm committed." I yanked my arm away, my heart pounding. "How can I trust you? You've already broken that trust once." She fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "I'm begging you. Please give me a chance to prove I'm serious. I will show you that I'm not that person anymore." I stood there, torn between the love I had for her and the fear that this was yet another betrayal. I didn't know what to believe. My heart ached in ways I didn't know it could. And I felt the weight of our entire relationship crashing down around us. We stood in silence, the air thick with unresolved tension and grief. I wanted to believe her, but doubt clawed at me fiercely. I felt like a fool for trusting so easily. It was then that I realized I needed to take a step back, not just from her, but from our relationship entirely. I had buried my father, but now I was faced with the reality of burying my marriage too. As I took a deep breath, I knew I had to make a choice. The path before me was unclear, but it was time to confront the truth. Would I choose to fight for a love that felt more like a battlefield, or would I finally let go of a relationship that had become too painful to bear? The answer was looming in the distance, waiting for me to find the courage to face it head-on. The silence stretched between us as I stood there, my heart pounding in my chest. Emily was on her knees, tears streaming down her face, and I felt a mix of pity and anger. It was hard to reconcile the woman I loved with the one who had betrayed me so profoundly. In that moment, I knew I had to make a decision that would impact the rest of my life. "I can't keep doing this," I finally said, my voice steady but heavy with emotion. "I can't keep putting myself through this pain. You've hurt me too deeply, and I need to protect myself." I took a step back, the distance feeling monumental. Emily looked up at me, shock etched on her features. "Please, don't say that. I can prove to you that I'm committed to us. Just give me a chance." But deep down, I realized I had already given her too many chances. The cycle of betrayal and forgiveness had become exhausting. I felt drained, like I was a shadow of my former self, clinging to the remnants of a love that had become tainted. "I need to think about what's best for me," I said, my voice firm but tinged with sadness. "I need to find the strength to move on." Her face crumpled and I felt a pang of sympathy, but I had to be strong. I had to prioritize my own healing. I turned away from her, walking towards the path that led back down the mountain, the breathtaking view now a blur of colors. As I descended, the weight of my decision began to settle in. I had thought that our love could withstand anything, but I had underestimated the toll betrayal takes on a relationship. Each step felt like an act of defiance against the pain that had been thrust upon me. I had buried my father, and now I was ready to bury our past. Back at the car, I sat in the driver's seat, my hands gripping the steering wheel as I took a deep breath. I knew I couldn't keep looking back. I had to focus on the road ahead. I turned on the engine, letting the familiar hum of the car soothe my frayed nerves, and drove away from the coast and the memories that weighed me down. In the days following that day, I sought solace in my friends and family. They became my lifeline, providing me with the support I needed to navigate the storm of emotions swirling inside me. I spent time with my brother, going out for drinks, laughing over silly stories, and trying to reclaim a sense of normalcy. Each shared moment reminded me that there was still joy to be found, even in the aftermath of heartbreak. I began to delve into self-care, focusing on my own needs and desires. I took up running, finding solace in the rhythm of my footsteps echoing against the pavement. I started reading again, getting lost in books that transported me to different worlds. I began to rediscover who I was outside of my relationship with Emily, and with every passing day, I felt a little lighter. As weeks turned into months, I found myself healing in ways I never thought possible. I started to regain my confidence and sense of self-worth. I learned that loving myself was the first step in moving past the pain. I began to embrace the idea that I deserved happiness, even if it meant letting go of what had once been a significant part of my life. Emily reached out to me a few times after our confrontation, voicing her remorse and longing for another chance. I read each message and felt the familiar tug of sadness in my heart, but I also felt the resolve to move forward. I responded to her once, clearly expressing that I needed space to heal and that I couldn't return to our relationship. I had learned the hard way that trust could be broken but rarely healed completely. Eventually, I realized that the memories of our past no longer held the same weight. I could reflect on the good times without feeling crushed under the weight of betrayal. I had buried my father, and now I was burying the past I had with Emily as well. By the time summer came to an end, I felt like a different person. I had reclaimed my life, slowly rebuilding my identity outside of the shadows of what had been. I learned that heartbreak, while painful, could also be transformative. I had loved deeply and lost profoundly, but I had also discovered the strength within myself to forge a new path. I began dating again, cautiously but with an open heart, ready to embrace new possibilities. I learned to trust again, not only in others but in myself. Reflecting on my journey, I could finally say that while the pain of betrayal had left its mark on me, it had also opened my eyes to what I truly desired in a partner and in life. I no longer felt like a victim of my circumstances. I was a survivor, ready to embrace the future. While the scars of my past would always be there, they had become part of my story, a testament to my resilience and growth. I had buried the past and left it there, and I was excited about what lay ahead. Life was waiting, and I was ready to meet it head-on.